Welcome to another episode of Fishers of Men with Salt. As we heard the last couple of weeks with Thomas and Peter about really what it means to be fishers of men and how to start digging deep into that journey. Before we start today's episode, I wanted to share a small story with you. Last weekend, we were in Charleston, South Carolina for a wedding, and we went to this beautiful fish restaurant by the beach. I ordered this fish plate, but it had next to it market price. So I wasn't really sure what that meant, but it looked great, so I ordered it. But I found myself throughout the dinner that I'm kind of anxious about what's the price for this? Why wouldn't they just put a normal pricing in there? Not knowing the cost of something really got to me. Today's episode is just about this topic, counting the cost. When we come to meet with the Lord, when we come into this boat that He has for us to be fishers of men, we need to find out how much it's really going to cost us. So as the Bible said, we don't start building something and come back from it. Christ told us that no one goes to war without counting the cost of how much this war would be. If we look together at the chapter of Luke 5, we see this happening a couple of times with the disciples actually. In verse 10, it says that all of the fishermen, Peter and his brother and James and the son of Zebedee, all of them kind of came together, and it says in verse 11, so when they had brought their boats to land, they forsook all and followed him. Then if we look later on in that chapter, we see with Matthew in verse 29, it says, then Levi gave him a great feast on his own house, and there were a great number of tax collectors there, and other who sat down with them. So he left all, rose up, and followed him. We see this happening over and over again. There is a cost when we meet with the one that our heart is after and the one that forsook everything, all of his glory, to come down to earth to be with us. We have to do something similar. There has to be something that we forsake. We can't think that we'll have a spiritual life or we'll have a good relationship with God without cutting something off, without forsaking something. There is a cost to everything that we're doing. With Peter, later on in his journey with Christ, he told him, look, Lord, we've forsaken everything to come and follow you. And the Lord responded to him, no one has forsaken a wife or husband or family or children or job or whatever for the sake of the kingdom, and it will be repaid to him many times over. There will be a reward, but before the reward, there has to be a cost, and we have to be very careful with this cost. I wanted to share something else from the book of Samuel, 1 Samuel chapter 14. And we see this very cool story with Jonathan and his servant who were in the middle of war, and all of the Israelites at that time didn't have any swords. They didn't have anything to go fight the Philistines with. Jonathan did something very, very strange where he asked his servant, let's go, leave everything, and let's see if God will win this war for us by just the two of us fighting. And it has a very famous verse in chapter 6 where it says, it may be that the Lord will work for us, for nothing restrains the Lord from saving by many or by few. The verse that I wanted to focus on is verse 13. It says, and Jonathan climbed up on his hands and knees with his armor bearer after him, and they fell before him, they being the Philistines. They fell before him, and as he came after him, his armor bearer killed them. You see that these were thousands of Philistines, and Jonathan was there by himself with his armor bearer, and they had to climb up on their hands and knees on this mountain. And as soon as they reached that top, as soon as they made that sacrifice, and as soon as they worked really hard and left everyone else behind, they were able to conquer them, and they all fell before Jonathan and his armor bearer. what I wanted to get out of today is there is a reward, but before the reward, there's a sacrifice. There's a cost that we have to count, and we have to be very willing to pay that cost. Otherwise, we're just tricking ourselves into thinking we have something when we really don't. Keep this in mind in our relationship with Christ, in our relationship with the church, in our relationships with each other. There has to be a sacrifice. There has to be something that I'm willing to give up to show this other person what true love is. As we know, love is a sacrificial love in Christianity, and Christ did that for us, and we have to do the same thing for him. Him be the glory forever and ever.